I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Human Design Podcast with me, your host, Emma Dunwoody. I'm a qualified master coach and human behaviour specialist, as well as being a qualified human design coach. And I work with clients every single day to answer the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And what is my purpose? I also assist them to transition from the person they think they should be to the person they really are on the inside. I teach people how to actually live their design instead of just knowing it. And if this is something that you want to do too, well, stay tuned or reach out for private coaching or Human Design Unpacks, where I show you exactly how to live your design.
Hey, welcome everyone to today's episode. In today's episode, I'm talking to someone who I don't even know how I didn't know this person was on the planet. Brandon Beachum has an incredibly popular podcast. He does shows. He's got books. He's an amazing human. This 4/6 Sacral Generator, right angle cross of the unexpected, was such an awesome human to speak to. And I feel like I could have talked to him for 3 days straight, and I have to go and binge his podcast. So Brandon Beachum is a thought leader, entrepreneur, author, philosopher, and truth seeker, and host of the Positive Head podcast, as well as the late night style talk show, Optimystic. Since childhood, Brandon has been a serial entrepreneur. In 2011, while living on a friend's couch, he co-founded what is present day ResortShare, which within 4 years of launch was named the 569th fastest growing private company in America in the annual Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies list. In 2015, amidst a business success and 15-year exploration of the ultimate nature of reality, Brandon answered the call to share and speak publicly about his spiritual insights and philosophies. This is such a fantastic conversation. Anyone, as I think I even say in the interview, anyone who says, I'm up for talking about the ultimate nature of reality is my kind of human. We talk about a lot of the present day issues and challenges and how we can actually use our spiritual journey and our understanding of the quantum reality that we live in to navigate these more challenging times with so much more love. So please check out Brandon's podcast, which, as I said, I'm going to go and absolutely binge. It's called the Positive Head podcast. And I think he said he had like 3,000 episodes. There's a lot of it out there. He also has the Golden Key, which is a book that is the modern alchemy to unlocking infinite abundance. So he goes through the 8 keys of abundance, which I think is just awesome. The last thing that was so, one of the things that I thought was so fun and really almost in alignment with human design, and we go through his design, which is pretty cool, is that he has this fantastic game on the website where you leave it up to the universe which episode of his podcast is correct for you. So that stuff lights me up. I love serendipity. I love leaving it up to the universe. So on that note, how about you leave it up to the universe, take a bit of time out and listen to this fun discussion with this awesome human, Brandon Beachum. Enjoy.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I am really excited about my guest today because what I didn't know is he's massive. Like, lots of people know this guy, follow this guy, have learned from him. And now I'm like, oh my God, this is like a rabbit hole I need to go down. So I'm super excited to introduce the Brandon Beachum. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Emma, so much for having me. I'm excited to dive in with you as well.
Yeah, I was just saying before I hit record, anyone that has on their notes that he's up for talking about the nature of reality is totally my kind of human. So I want to kind of learn about how you got to that point. For my audience, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about that journey. I mean, many of us that work in the world that we work in we at some point hit our dark night of the soul. And from that pivotal moment, we became, or at least we began that hero's journey to become who we are today and the work that we're doing. So I'd really love to hear about that journey for you. Oh, and I just have to let our listeners know that Brandon is a 4/6 Sacral Generator, cross of the unexpected, which is actually my second today. So the universe is trying to tell me something. So Brandon, tell us about your journey.
I'm happy to do that. And I don't know if I've ever heard, I know I was a 4/6 generator, the cross of the unexpected. I don't know if I ever heard that in reference to, my human design. So I'm excited to hear a bit more about what that means. But to go back to your question, let's see, I started really on my own spiritual journey in my early 20s. I was raised in a very conservative Christian household where, we were taught, God loves you with a bunch of conditions. And if you don't meet those conditions, then, the bad man's coming for you and he's going to torture you for eternity. And so, I was raised with going to church 3 times a week, went to a Christian college, ultimately got kicked out for being a bad kid, quote unquote, which means normal. And by the way, not to just put down Christianity or anything like that. I think there's some great principles and things even in the Bible that have been misconstrued, but that very narrow lens on what source is was kind of shaken for me in my early 20s when I met a woman who claimed to have some intuitive ability. And she demonstrated some things to me that sort of backed her claims, and it kind of shook me to my core, where I then started investigating for the first time, outside of what I was raised to believe, and looking at, I remember one of the early books that I read was a book called The Psychic Explorer that was all about out-of-body experience and astral projection and those sorts of things. And so as I started to read and explore, Conversations with God, if you're familiar with that book series.
Love it. Yep.
Yeah, me too. I was fortunate enough to have Neil Donald Walsh on my podcast recently, Positive Head. And that was a really, a real treat because those books were very influential in my early journey.
Yeah, same. And especially, I wonder, can I just quickly jump in? I just want to ask you, because one of the biggest challenges I had with that book initially was that it was, God was in the title. Like that was the hardest thing for me to get over. Like once I got past the whole God bit, I was like, hey, this guy's on to something. I love it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, the God is really such a charged name term. And, I saw, it makes me think of a funny meme. I'm just, my main reason for being on social media is I'm just here for the memes. And one of the memes I saw the other day goes, what if God just came down out of the sky, yelled really loudly, it's actually pronounced Jod, and then just went back up.
I love it.
Okay, fair. That would rattle a lot of people, but I do prefer to refer to, for that reason, source, higher self, the universe, for that reason, because I do think that that's such a charged word and means, brings up all kinds of things for different people. But that being said, as I started exploring a lot of the concepts, like in those books, for example, it was I can only assume, Emma, because it's part of my dharmic path to do the work that we're doing, sharing about these topics, to the public and reaching other people and helping them to shift their perspectives and consider some of the ideas. It just resonated so much with me. It was like, oh my gosh, of course it's structured this way. It's so elegant and simple and brilliant that it's all one, and it's all reflections of this, we're fractals of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. How is everyone not geeking out over this?
And it feels true. Yeah, it feels true. That was the thing. I'm like, oh, obviously, but yet I've kind of never heard that stuff before. So I get it.
Right. So as I was exploring these concepts, it really just lit me up. I was super excited to talk with anyone who would listen about, the ideas. And that's kind of the path that I started down. And I just at that time, this is like late 90s. I would talk to anyone who would listen about, some of the things that I was, as I sort of had my own awakening or remembering, I was just, like I said, so lit up about the topic. And so I would talk to anyone that would listen. And at the time it was, people were either like, what is this guy smoking? Or that's really interesting, and go about their normal life. And I'm thinking, how is this not, as exciting to everyone else as it is to me? And, I think it was just from one perspective, this information, of course, is ancient and always been around. And another, it's sort of new in our culture. I go to a lot of transformational festivals and things. And, at these events, it's so common. Every 21-year-old is like, oh yeah, of course I know I'm one with source. It's like it's like trendy. But back then it was like the internet was way different, in its early infancy. You couldn't really connect with people the way you could, I had books with authors who were unknown and unknowable. And, then as was predicted in a lot of those texts, like there's going to be this great awakening and people are going to start to remember en masse. And I've really seen that over the last, 25 years, watched that unfolding happening. And it's been, just really exciting to see that, as the world has its plenty of challenges, but I think that's the bright light with it all, is like there's lots of people that are having these rememberings of who and what they are and the ultimate nature of reality. So so that's really how my journey went. And did I have challenges or dark nights of the soul? I certainly had a lot of challenges along the way. I think in some ways, to be honest, my journey has been easier than many I hear about. Certainly I've had some hard times and tricky things, but so many blessings and blessed with good health. And I've sort of told the story of, I don't believe in getting sick my whole life, and that's worked. And, certainly there's been some darker journeys in my own, and I trust that I've gotten what I need and am grateful for that as well.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really interesting listening to your story that there's this level of, what it sounds like to me, that there's this level of willingness and openness to the whole journey, and learning the new things. Like I know for me personally, I was raised in a religious, more school. My family weren't hugely religious, but my grandfather died when I was really young, and I was like, yeah, I'm out. I don't believe in this God dude, because that would never have happened.
Right.
And, so I really rejected anything that was almost God or universe or spirit or anything. And my journey came very much up through the science, and it was this, because I found myself, I was diagnosed with depression and panic disorder at 28, told that I'd have to be medicated for the rest of my life and that I'd never heal it. And that wasn't an option. There was either like no life, or I'm going to heal myself. So that was my catalyst. And that whole journey was about the science, like the provability, the scene, all of that sort of stuff. So I didn't have your same openness, or what it seems like you had, until I started picking up all the books that I was like, oh, hang on a second. Quantum physics and metaphysics, they just say the same thing. And like, I started to have this whole like, oh, right. And one of the big game changers for me was, I was listening to, I think it was Bruce Lipton, and he said that it was, Newton that made an agreement with the church that science would only ever study what they could see, and then everything else that was unseen was the realm of the church. And I remember going, oh, right, that makes all the difference, Right. So from a human design point of view, actually, I'm going to go back to your cross of the unexpected, because your story about meeting the person out of curiosity, the person that you had the psychic reading or the clairvoyant reading, whatever that was that just kind of random? Did she just kind of
She turned up through mutual friends, and then we got to be friends. And then, she sort of was on this wavelength and doing a lot of things in predicting things. And, did this one exercise one time where she appeared to demonstrate that she had telepathic abilities. And so it just was I saw enough that it just kind of tweaked my interest. And the one thing I didn't add that was really kind of profound to anchor it all in as I started reading and learning and getting really lit up and excited about this stuff, is I started to have some really powerful synchronicities and serendipities and sort of spiritual breadcrumbs thing, which to this day still light me up like a child. And I think that's a reason why I have such an incredible amount of them. And, I share stories all the time on my podcast with, some of them are pretty wild and, yeah, just fun. And I think it's that childlike wonder, speaking of the Bible, lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. There's one great statement I fully back and agree with. And so I think the combination of seeing some evidence outside of me, then some evidence around me, then reading and it just clicking like a knowing. I think it was kind of the culmination of all those things. So
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. And from the human design angle of the cross of the unexpected, what's really fascinating is that, like, if a person with this cross comes into your life, then the question is, or the statement is, that you are going to probably unexpectedly become a leader or have to step into leadership. And isn't that funny? That's exactly what happened for you after that experience. Like, it kind of was a fork in the road. And all of a sudden you unexpectedly stepped into this leadership role. So I love it. I love when we can just see this evidence of how our human design is playing out, whether we're conscious of it or not. So
yeah, it's really fascinating when you look at some of these modalities to understand how we are wired and structured. And, it's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah. It's good fun as long as we don't get stuck in it, as long as we don't use it as a dogma. It's super, super powerful.
Or lean on it too much, or, it's like, that there's always that risk with such things like astrology, like, oh, I have to consult the stars. And it's like, then you become, if it's disempowering you, if it's, if it's instead of enhancing, it becomes like a crutch. I think that's when maybe we've crossed a line.
Yeah, I remember, again, Bruce Lipton saying that apparently the higher we raise our consciousness, the further away we get from these things like our astrology or our human design or whatever it is. It's like the lines all start to blur, which, I definitely have that experience almost in my own life pretty regularly. But you know what I'd love to talk to you about, through the frame of human design, we talk about the new paradigm. Whatever you subscribe to, the age of Aquarius or whatever it is, that we're going through this massive change. We're going through this massive transformation. And one of the things that, like, I am so certain on every level that this new world or this new paradigm or whatever we're creating is actually a really wonderful, brilliant, great place. But I'd really love, like, what would you say to people, mainstream people that perhaps are still in the process of waking up? They're living with so much fear, so much uncertainty. They actually believe that a lot of the powers that be are telling them the truth and that we're all doomed and everything's going to go to hell. How do we, in your opinion, given that this is so much of the work that you do, really helping people wake up to the truth, whatever that is, like maybe that's just individual truth or individual reality, but what would you say to people moving towards, or at least hoping for, this new potential that's going to be great, but feeling like they're just like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, great question. And I like how you referenced the truth. And I love the statement I heard not so long ago. There's only one truth, your truth.
Yeah.
And what I like about that statement, I talk often about relative truths, two apparently contradictory things that both hold true depending on the vantage point from which we are speaking. You and I are separate. We can make an argument for that's true. You and I are one. We're talking about that concept as well, maybe a higher truth, a deeper truth. Both truths depending on the vantage point, right? Both relative truths. And so I think that's really important. And then you throw in, this idea of there's only one truth, your truth. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you are one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things, creates, right? It creates its reality based off of its beliefs, its truth. So you are so powerful that you're actually creating, like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Well, how can both be right? Well, you're creating with your beliefs. And so when you apply, what I would say to the people who are feeling very disempowered, it's based off of a perspective that you are separate from the thing. And I've had Bruce Lipton on the show actually, and
love Bruce.
I do too. And I had another quantum physicist named Nassim Haramein on at one time. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not. So he posted something one time that really jumped out at me. It was a graph, like line graph, like, with crossing lines. And it was sort of a toroidal twisting image, if you can imagine, kind of like conical. And he said, imagine this stretching infinitely in all directions. And then there's points where lines cross all throughout it, right? And he's like, the interesting thing, even if this stretches throughout infinity, any one node, if you go to that node, it's the center. And so if you think in the terms of that, like you are a node of source consciousness, and you therefore are the center of your own reality. If you think of source being so infinite and so creative and infinitely in all directions, then there is a reality where it's experiencing through the lens of you and your avatar, and everything is a reflection of that avatar in some way, shape, or form that is showing up. The person cutting you off on the road, your family members, the story you're hearing about what's happening overseas in some war. It's all some reflection of the one in that, I refer to it in my book as the universe, the YOU universe. You are the lead actor and director and star in your own universe. And one of the empowering things about getting that is, I always say our life plays out at the corner of free will and destiny. It's all destined because it's all already happened. Time is an illusion. Science has proven that, right? If you shoot me in outer space at light speed and bring me back a day later, I'm a day older and you've been gone for 100 years or something. So it's relative. It's all already happened. And it's all happening now, infinitely in the eternal now. So it's destined because it's all already happened. Where free will comes in, because source is so infinite, from this moment forward, there's infinite versions of us. So, well, which one do I want to step into? I want to step into the one that is the most rewarding, most fulfilling, the most positive, let's say. And the good news is, no matter how grandiose that vision is, source and its infinite creativity has already been there, done that, and gotten the t-shirt. It's already happened. So when you feel disempowered, I remember and tap into the energy of, hold on, I'm not disempowered. I'm the lead actor in this movie. Like, I'm the star. Of course I make it. Everyone is a prop in my movie. And I'm experiencing God through this avatar, and there's infinite realities, and vice versa. I'm created in the image you have imagined me in this moment. I'm a prop in your movie. We're all stars in our own, and we're the only one in the room. And so when you think in those terms, it is so empowering, because it's like, well, if it's free will and destiny, both, I want to step into the most rewarding, powerful, impactful, positive timeline from this moment forward. It exists. It already has happened. It's already played out in the infinite now. And so I shift into it by shifting my vibration, by telling most people do something like work in order to have something like money, in order to be something like happy. Well, be something like happy, and you find yourself doing and having the things that are a reflection. This is how we be it to see it, not the other way, around. And so once you start living from that empowered perspective, I don't need to change the world out there and necessarily save it. I need to change my own vibration and story and energy, and the way I'm navigating in the world actually shifts as I shift into different time. Bashar talks about this, that if you're familiar with the channel Bashar, he talks about we're shifting in and out of timelines like thousands of times a day. It's like constantly, like a movie flickering, it's like it's flickering so fast it appears solid and fluid, but it's really just, these static images flickering really fast. That's what we're light, we're made of light. We're flickering in and out of dimensional reality constantly. And you are the one actually getting to drive which timeline you step into with the vibration you're offering. And so to me, that's very empowering to realize, like, hold on, I'm the only one here. And as the creator and created rolled into one, I create with my energy and vibrational offering, and that's going to shift. Is there a world from this moment forward that destroys itself? Probably so. Is there one that goes into full utopia? Probably so. Is there everything in between? Probably so. The question is, which one are you going to step into, right? If you and I are right now having the conversation and you say, Brandon, it's all doom and gloom, it's going bad, and you are resonating with that vibration, and I'm like, no, I'm going to utopia, right? We're going to wake up and remember, and there may be challenges along the way, but they'll only make us stronger. And I hold to that vibration and you hold to yours. We could be like ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
You literally go from this moment forward to 5 years down the road in that, horrific scenario. And I could be, or vice versa. I could be the one going to the horrific scenario, and you're the one who's been positive and going to the incredible timeline that you envisioned and held the vibration of. And you literally navigated into that reality. And by the way, there'd be another version of Brandon there that would represent, where we resonated. That's how I view it working. And to me, it is very empowering and helps me to feel like, that there is some level of control. And I do believe our higher self, it's a dance with our higher self. We have our version of what we think should be and is best for our growth based off our limited perspective. And then our higher self, I think there's certain things that are sort of pre-baked in for a particular avatar's, soul's journey. Like there's probably a lot of versions of Brandon from this moment forward, but probably not one where I go on to play center of the Los Angeles Lakers, right? So, there's certain trajectories of soul. So, if I think the best thing for me is to step into this timeline that is, rainbows and butterflies, and I do everything I can to manifest that and create that, and yet something else happens, that's where it's having expectation, I think, is fine and okay, and aim of where you want to go with a healthy sense of detachment, knowing, I'm doing a dance with my higher self, that I'm playing checkers, my higher self is playing chess, and they're seeing parts of the board that I just can't even begin to know. As one of the keys in my book is trust the mystery. Get to where I trust whatever's coming, because I realize it's happening for my good and growth, whether I can see it at this moment or not.
Yeah, I love that. Trust the mystery. And I love everything that you're saying. We actually had an experience in 2021 where my husband and I decided we would sell up, buy a caravan, and travel around Australia with our kids. So we spent 2021 traveling, and we heard nothing about COVID in 2021. Like, it was, I look back and go, that's how we create alternate timelines, because I literally lived probably 10 of those 12 months without even saying the word COVID. Like, it was crazy. And even though we lived in a place where in many places in Australia, we were the worst lockdown, worst rules, don't even want to get into that. So I 100% believe and know in every cell of my body what you're saying is true. It's definitely, at least it's true for me. One of the things that I'm curious about, because it's something that I bang on about, I really want your opinion about though, is, so we live in this time of chaos, and we live in this time where we are becoming more and more aware that there are people that are in power that have been manipulating, controlling, and basically dominating, the human race and trying to control the outcomes. Yep. Now, as we are going through this process, I can see that there are so many people that believe on every level that they're doing the right thing by trying to fight against this tyranny, if you like.
Yep.
And one of the things for me is I've kind of been like, yes, I need to be aware of it, But I don't think, like, as you say, like if I'm creating my reality, I don't want my reality to be about that. I want it to be about something else. So I really love your opinion on how we navigate, like being educated about what's going on in the world, but also being super aware of what's going into our consciousness, what's going into this important thing that is creating this new reality. How do we navigate what we kind of, and I don't think need to know is the best word, but what we need to know, and then what we actually is going to be best for us to focus on, or, you know, that sort of thing.
Great question. Great question. Such a nuanced thing to get to. You know, where attention goes, energy flows, right?
Exactly.
We're creator. So when I turn my gaze, you know, and we know this, going back to the science, quantum physics, you know, the double slit experiment.
Yeah.
When an observer is there looking at particles, they're in a fixed state. When consciousness is not observing, they're in a state of quantum superposition or potentials that they then snap into a particular spot when consciousness is observing. So when we're observing, I think you hit the nail on the head with, I think it's important to be aware. And then so you realize that contrast of, oh, this is happening, this may be happening, this I don't prefer, which helps to inform me about what I'm for. So because what we resist persists. Whatever we're giving energy to is growing. We buy what we pay attention to. So so when you become aware, that's not my preference, that's not the thing I'm for, is it healthy for me to now get obsessed with the Illuminati and this cabal and, you know, the dark forces that are controlling, and I think about them and study them and want to know, and all I'm doing is feeding the beast in a sense. It's like, I believe Mother Teresa really had it figured out when they asked her about this whole thing. Of course, she went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And, you know, I had someone on my show years back who studied all these different mystics around the world who had incredible superpowers and things like that. And I said, who was the most impactful that you met, you know, over this 20-year journey of seeing all these cool things? He goes, honestly, it was Mother Teresa. Her heart was so blasted open just being in her presence. I was affected.
Oh, I've got so many goosebumps right now. That's awesome.
And I thought that was a really, because he had seen some pretty cool stuff, you know, mystical, magical things. And so, you know, they asked her to march against the war in Vietnam. It went the 1 Million Man March or something, I think it was. And they wanted her to be a big part of it. And she said, I'll never do that, but have a march for peace and I'll be there. Because she understood the importance of being for something and against nothing. We don't need to dismantle these things in a way that it consumes our life and it's like fight fire with fire. Actually, by giving our energy, it's you know, it's through giving our energy to the new that the old falls apart.
Oh, right? I love that.
And it's so important to get. I believe, because, you know, there's a lot of people with a lot of good intention who are like rallying against, you know, the thing. And it's like, oh, but at what cost? You know, you're literally giving it more life force and energy. And meanwhile, you could be working on the new system that makes the old system obsolete. It crumbles under the inefficiency and silliness and the lack of energy going into it. And so I think that's how we do that dance.
Yeah, I love that. And it's something that, because there's people that I follow and podcasts that I listen to that in itself challenges me, because they do focus not necessarily the podcast themselves, but the person, the person is very focused on these things. And I'm like, dude, stop it. Like, you're just creating more of it.
Yep.
But what would you say?
Mean well.
Go ahead.
And they mean
exactly.
well,
100%. And it's like these people, especially like the people that I'm following, are like, they're incredible human beings. Like, they're heart-led, they're making a difference. And it's like this part of me that's like, you could be making so much more difference if you just shift. I often say, like, just a couple of steps to the left, just shift that focus a bit. But what would you say to people that say, well, we need to be paying attention to these things? Because if we're starting to look over here, in fact, I want to take it in a slightly different direction, because when we're looking over here, we're looking to the new, we're actually looking to the unknown. A lot of science, a friend of mine sent me a podcast the other day, and basically he was a very, very experienced scientist, and he was just basically saying the whole world is fucked because we don't have enough energy, and we don't this and we don't that. And I remember listening to this podcast and going, dude, you're just looking at the past. Like, you're not looking at any potential for the future. And this is so, the world through human design, this is the paradigm that we're moving out of. And it's very about structure and the masculine and separation and these sort of things. But these people are like world-class experts that are telling us that we're screwed. However, there's us that are like, okay, we know that doesn't feel true. And we know that something better feels like it's coming. But how do we actually get from, well, you're telling me I have to disregard this expert and somehow believe in something that we don't know or see or what's coming? Like, how do we start to really build the trust in ourselves to leap across this, big sort of cavernous gap that we've got in this time of chaos?
Yeah, I hear you. And, I think being aware of the challenges that, I think of an expert, and then look at all the experts who have spoken about science over the years and how wrong they've been so many times. It's anyone who is speaking in absolutes as if they know for sure, I'm instantly suspect of. It's like, you don't have enough information to say definitively what will or won't happen. And I don't believe anyone does. Now, it doesn't mean to disregard experts, and it doesn't mean that there's not some great wisdom there and they could know some things that I certainly couldn't. And not saying that. Once again, if we get sold an idea that we're all doomed, that is the most surefire way to create doom. That one thing we know, I mean, placebo accounts for more than 30% of healings, including surgery. Some people say way more than that. 30% is like low end number. Like, you talk about Bruce Lipton, biology of belief. Beliefs create reality. This has been demonstrated. So when someone's coming and offering you a perspective, you have to really analyze, do I want to buy this? Is this what I want to own? And if it's not, then, start exploring, well, yeah, I hear you. I understand you're real passionately telling me 100% you got all the answers and this can't happen, but what would it look like if it could? When you start thinking outside of the lines and take the times experts have told the person that this is 100%, you'll be dead in 3 weeks. This cancer kills everyone it's ever touched. Say goodbye. Oh, we don't know where the tumor went. It miraculously disappeared. We can't explain this. And usually those people are speaking that doom and gloom. I'm not going to say anything definitively. Once again, I'm not going to speak in absolutes, but a lot of times I found these real, kind of know-it-all-y personalities, and I'm not going to name names like Neil deGrasse Tyson, but when I hear someone like that who speaks really definitively, his ego knows and he knows it all. It's like, a lot of times these sorts of characters are like, they've done a lot of goal line work in their career and very little soul line work, and their perspectives even on, some of the smartest and brightest are like atheists. And I'm thinking, okay, instantly, if you haven't tapped in to spirit and had a dance or, the amount of magical interaction and spiritual breadcrumb and communication with something beyond myself that's happened, that's mind-blowing. And I'm like, if you haven't had that yet and you're not tapped in on that level energetic, it doesn't make me better. It just means we're different. And certainly you haven't figured out what to me is like ground zero, most fundamental, understanding some of these concepts about the ultimate nature of reality and who and what we are. If you don't know that you're a fractal of the source consciousness that creates and animates all things, you're playing from a limited perspective that instantly I'm not as interested in your, it's like, I'm not going to go to someone who's completely out of shape and in the worst health ever to get health advice or relationship advice, but they've never had a successful relationship. It's like, if you don't understand the fundamentals of the nature of the situation in which you find yourself as a soul having a human experience, a spirit having a human experience, you know, you're speaking from a vantage point that is extremely limited. And, you know, and it doesn't mean you can't have great insights and knowledge that I can't, but I'm certainly not going to hook my wagon to your you know, belief system that doesn't even embody the most fundamental, you know, piece of our existence.
Principles of the universe. Yeah, totally. Now, obviously, well, a lot of my listeners, not obvious to you, a lot of my listeners are, you know, they're very driven by having an impact, doing something to help planet Earth navigate. And of course, in that place, this incredible book, which is all about like the 8 keys, driven by the mission. I was always so driven by the work that I wanted to do. But hey, I also need to pay the bills. Like, it was, for me, it was balancing that whole like, and of course I had to do all the mindset and the healing and money's not evil and all of that sort of stuff. But I'd love your wisdom on these principles that you talk about and the keys that you talk about, because as we are, you know, moving through this, I think, really exciting time, because we're really starting to see miraculous, incredible things. Like, after listening to that podcast that my friend sent me, I listened to Zach Bush being interviewed, and how they've created this incredible microbiome, but in the ocean, that uses ocean plastic and turns it into biofuel. I'm like, what? That's amazing, right?
Yeah, right.
But we have like, money and abundance is a thing. Now, in human design, it actually really helped me understand abundance deeply, because the way we look at it through a frame. We call it one of the gates. It's the gate 55. And the fundamental principle is that abundance is being free to be you. And when you're fully connected to that place, then you will attract abundance in all sorts of areas. So, you know, that's very much abundance-wise, that's where I operate from these days. But I'd love your wisdom and your experience and your guidance around your keys to abundance.
Yeah. It is such an important piece, figuring out how do we you know, attract and create all the things that lead to the most fulfilling life. And of course, abundance a lot of times is conflated with monetary wealth as the primary piece of what abundance, you know, represents. And I would say, you know, that's very secondary to other things like health and happiness and peace, freedom. And so, you know, what you touched on was, how do you make sure that you're doing the thing that you most want to do, and we live in a monetary system as of this moment, and so it's important. And I think part of the formula is, you know, if you want to live your greatest and greatest self, it's going to involve service in some way, the most abundant version of your life. And the reason, you know, Gandhi said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. And the reason I believe that holds true is because there are no others. It's in giving that we actually receive. You know,
I love that.
When people actually start to realize the more you take, the less you have, things are going to really shift. When that becomes like a known truth. The more I take, the less I have. The more I give, the more I receive. The reason, because I'm always giving to self. I'm always, you know, there's a great meme where it shows a bunch of people sitting around a big pot of stew or something, and they're trying to eat out of it. They're sitting around this giant pot, and they have really long spoons. So they're sticking the spoon in the pot, and then they're trying to take it to their mouth, but it's too long. They can't get their giant spoon to their own mouth. and they're
Yeah.
trying and everyone's like struggling. And then all of a sudden they realize, hold on, but I can reach across and feed the person
Oh,
across.
I love it.
And once you start to realize your greatest gift, being truly abundant, is living your true, if you're doing what you love, you never work a day in your life, right? So being truly abundant is you're lit up by the thing that you're doing. Well, one hint, it's going to involve service in some way, shape, or form, because that's how the universe actually functions and flows, and energy moves. And so I think that's really, Wayne Dyer used to always say, he quoted St. Francis of Assisi a lot of time, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace, setting that intention. I want to be an instrument of peace and healing on this planet, and in the lane that is best for me. And by the way, there's a lane and there's something for you. There's enough room for everyone.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people get these stories of, there's too many people, there's not enough space, I'm not good enough, whatever story they're telling. And then it turns into, once again, as a creator being, abracadabra translates to I create as I speak. And so you're spelling, you're casting a spell, your words are your wands when you're saying these things. So telling the right story is foundational. I am enough. You are as worthy as any other being ever has been, could be, or will be. You are it. It is you. There is no other. Other is an illusion. And so if anything's worthy, you're worthy, because you're the only thing. and with all your bumps and bruises, and all the the things, you're perfectly imperfect. It's all led you to becoming the next greatest and grandest version of yourself. And the more bumpy the ride, the greater one toils for their freedom, the greater the sense of freedom that is attained. And so, realizing like, okay, I deserve to be fulfilled. And that's going to come through lifting up a rising tide raises all ships. Yeah. It's going to involve service in some ways. If I haven't figured out what that looks like, that's okay too. The journey is the goal, right? You're on the path. You are in existence now. You don't listen to a song to get to the final note, or you don't dance to get to a certain spot on the dance floor. It's the journey. You're in the journey. Yeah. So if you still don't know, how excited, I always relate this to like Christmas, because as a kid, Christmas was a big deal in my household. And it was like, well, what was more exciting, Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? Christmas Eve was the anticipation of not knowing what's to come. And, Christmas Day, it's like, oh, it's really fun too. You receive, and then it's kind of over, and, the excitement and mystery's gone. And so I invite people to get into that excitement of, for those who are like, I don't know, and there's all this negative story around it. What if I don't know? Yes, that's so exciting, because I'm so worthy, and I'm willing to be of service. I'm willing to offer myself in this way that leads to my most abundant life. And which of course entails financial health and everything in between, everything that you can think of, a relationship, connection, peace. All the things that are the forms of abundance we all desire, they all come as a byproduct of us being, in alignment with our greatest and greatest version.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things, we talk a lot about purpose in my community. And one of the things I often say is, you're already on purpose, like it's happening. Like the moment that our purpose really starts is when we're born. But for me personally, I also believe that often that dark night of the soul, so that diagnosis for me at the age of 28, that was a pivotal moment in my purpose. Like, and if you'd said, I would have been like, no, it's not. It's meant to be like all fun and joyous and all those sort of things. But I think that's the point, is that we're actually here to have these experiences and then serve from that place and share our, our journey and what we've learned, and, help other people go through that same process. And for you specifically, again, I just have to nerd out on your human design. Like, you're a 4/6, and you are coming really close to really maturing into that line 6. That line 6 it's called the role model. It's also this energy of like the visionary. The line 6 is, although human design is very much about, it's called the science of differentiation. So it's really all about the uniqueness of each of us. But the line 6 is even more unique. Like, you guys are so It's very much about your journey. And when you mature into this, post Chiron, and Chiron's around 50, this is a time where everything that you've already done is just going to amplify even more, because like all that wisdom that you've created up until this point, that's nothing. You've just been creating, like, and my husband's a line 6 as well. And we're all the same age. And it's crazy how literally it's almost like he's become almost like the Pied Piper in the most resourceful, fantastic way, because like all the younger men, especially, they're like, oh my God, how do you have this amazing relationship? How do you do what you love? How do you still ride BMXs and motorbikes and skateboards and blah, 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 and this is your energy, you're only just getting started, which is super, super exciting. Love that.
I feel that. It's funny that you say that, and what a beautiful reflection. It's, I've told the story that, I'm 48 and I feel like I'm 21, it's like this childlike wonder and excitement is just always around me. And my life is literally like a dream. It's so much fun and so much play and so many incredible reflections. And I've just chosen that. I just made it up. It's like literally I'm just making it up, and we can all do that. And if you've had, like I said, if you've had a tough journey, congratulations, because that contrast lays the groundwork for you to really appreciate all the good that is inevitably ahead of you. If you choose, I believe in any given moment that sources it all. It needs it all. There is no up without down, left without right. Evil is live spelled backwards. It's like you need the shadow is a part of the light, but make no mistake, it's all happening for love. It's all tools for love to mean something. Right. And so, I believe in any given moment, the question being posed to us is, what part of it all do you need next? And if you've had a lot of darkness and dark night of the soul and challenge, it's like, wow, congrats, because now you have the contrast necessary to fully appreciate all the good that is inevitably waiting for you to, instead of, like the Chinese proverb, fall down 8 times, stand up 9, right? When you can get up like the child and brush yourself off and go back to playing and go back to believing, what happens with so many people? They get beat down, and then they start telling the story. This is how life is. Life is tough. Life is meant to be tough. I lose. It's too late for me, and on and on and on and on. It's like, it's such a empowering reflection to hear you say, oh, you're just getting started. Like, I literally feel that and say that all the time. So you're reflecting that back to me. And it's like, do you know how many people at 48 have decided that it's over? The best days are behind. There's no, there's nothing more, it's so exciting to be alive at this time with these understanding these spiritual concepts and principles and perspectives that we're sharing on this episode, and looking at what's happening with biology and technology, and you combine all those things. I mean, you have people like Ray Kurzweil saying we're going to reach escape velocity in the next, like 5 years or so, which is essentially, escape velocity is like where our technology has completely outpaced our aging, and therefore the sky's the limit on how old you can potentially live to be. So it's, and on top of that, you're in eternity now. You're an eternal being having a human experience. You are ancient as ancient can be now. And so it's like, whatever you learn or take or grow from, it all goes with you. Whether you live another 150 years here or 1,000 years or 10 years or 10 days, either way, you go on, and whatever gains in growth and in perspective, they are along for the ride. And so, there's so much to look forward to and work towards still.
Oh, I love that. And I just feel that is so true on every level. And I love what you said, like, we're everything we get to take with us, into the next life. I just had, Ainsley McLeod. I don't know if you know Ainsley McLeod. He's coming up on the podcast. He's like world-class past life. Like, look him up. He will blow your mind.
Oh, I'm going to write him down.
And I had a quick session before I had him on the podcast, just to sort of get a feel. And like he took me back to the past life before, and literally trauma that I looked for in this life, because I'm a behavioral specialist. I know a trauma response, and I have this trauma response. And I was like, where did that come from? And it didn't, I literally thought I'd repressed my memory, but it was all of this from this past life. And I think that also is so powerful for us to understand, is that we are, you know, however long we're going to be here, it's not even just going to be this lifetime. We're going to keep reincarnating and keep learning these lessons and being on the journey. And every time we learn the lesson, you choosing to be childlike and playful, and like you have very magnetic energy that's like, I could sit and listen to you talk all day. Like, meanwhile, I will be going and binging the rest of your podcast. And which is a big statement for me, because I've just binged so much for many, many years that I was like, that's it. I can't listen to another thing. But I'm super excited. And I also want to geek out a little bit more on human design. And I know that we're nearly at time, and I want to respect your time, but you also have one of the gates in a very prominent part of your chart. So in your design earth, where this is potentially a place where you actually feel the most fulfilled, most on purpose on the inside, you know, so not necessarily the purpose on the outside, but purpose on the inside. And you actually have a gate that's called the gate of struggle. And in its shadow, it is the epitome of the human struggle. In its higher expression, it is this, and in its low expression, it fears that life has no meaning. Whereas in its high expression is like life itself is the meaning, you know, and you're just such a beautiful expression of that. Like you're just living it day in, day out, which I think is so beautiful. And the other thing for your human design, I just want to add, is there's a part of our design, it's your design Mars, that is what we call our vocation. So it's our core talent. And you actually have it in the gate of stillness. And the shadow is stress. And the stress is, you know, like about, you know, like being consumed by mental stress, basically. But this higher expression is literally just being a channel for source consciousness, like being able to be still and receive. So again, like I feel like you're just so aligned to this energy that is your design, which is beautiful.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, I definitely can say that agitation or frustration has been a challenge, you know, letting myself get like, you know, I have a lot of energy, and not being still enough. It's been a big part of my own journey to becoming, you know, my greatest and greatest self, I would say. So I resonate with that a lot.
Yeah. I love that. It's funny because our vocation or our core talent, what sits under it is our core wound as well. So again, that makes sense as well. But Brandon, I have to let you go as much as I don't want to. So before you go, can you please let people know where they can find the podcast, the website, the book, anything else you want to share?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the podcast, anywhere that you get your podcast, if you search Positive Head, you'll be able to find many episodes. I started in 2015, and we're just about 2,000 episodes.
Wow.
So it's a whole lot.
I got a lot of binging to do.
Well, yeah. Let me know when you've listened to every one of them, and then we'll do a test. But yeah, it's five episodes a week. So I do 3, and then my co-host, Dr. Erica Middlemist, does 2. And one of those 3 that I do is a soul share, you know, interview style. And so the other 2, I just kind of, you know, it's me solo freestyling, whatever is kind of coming up at that time and whatever feels inspiring to tap into. So yeah, that's the podcast, Positive Head, and the book. So if you want to get the book, The Golden Key, Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance, it's my 8 keys we touched on a little bit here, of 25 years of deep exploration of the ultimate nature of reality and exploring these concepts. I sort of, you know, I talk a lot and have a lot to say, and it's like, okay, how do I distill some of this down into, you know, it's 100 pages, 3 hours if you listen to the audiobook that I narrate. And yeah, so I wanted to do something a little unique with it and gift it to people and allow them to gift it to others. And so we have a whole like fun kind of gamification piece to it. But you can go to goldenkey.gift. And if you use the code love at checkout, you can get the audio and or ebook as a gift.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. I will be doing that as soon as I get off here.
Yay. Well, I hope you enjoy it. I enjoyed writing it, and yeah, it's quite a journey. Well, podcasting is one thing, right? We get to just like kind of talk as things come out, and then writing is such a meticulous, and
tell me about it.
I'm
writing a book right now, and I'm like, there's all this structure, and I'm like, okay, this is the thing I have been challenged by most of my life, fitting into a structure. But so I get it. Yeah,
and it's really rewarding too. But as you know, it's it takes a lot of mental focus and energy.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like just looking at your design as well, like you, although you're a generator, so a lot of, if you've followed much human design information, they'll say that, you have a lot of energy and you do a lot of things and just follow what lights you up. But you also have a design where you only have two defined centers, which means you're actually processing other people's energy all the time. And that is really, 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 tiring. And what's more is like you're processing. So you're taking in, amplifying and reflecting back other people's fear, other people's emotion, other people's mental energy.
Wow.
So this is exhausting. And it's also that like people that don't have definition, let's say in the spleen, is that, you might work through a fear, let's say, and think that you're done with that. And then all of a sudden there's this other fear or something similar to it, but it's not even yours. It's just that you're in the aura of somebody else. So, a lot of that energy piece for you might be just that there's so much other people's energy running through your system. And, it comes back to that stillness piece, that if there's ways that you can, for me, it's like, I'd say like get in the ocean. That's what we do to get other people's energy off us. But anything that you can do to be doing that, even like red light saunas or hiking in nature or any of those things that you can be doing to really cleanse your energy, because you are really taking in and amplifying so much energy from other people. And that can be super uncomfortable, because it's also like places where we talk about being deeply empathetic, because you really can feel other people's emotions and you really can feel what other people are thinking and you really can feel other people's fears. But our unconscious mind doesn't realize that it's not ours. So then we do create a story, or we create a belief, or we create something. So then it kind of sticks. So it's important that we're like, wow, I did not feel this way before I was in this person's aura. So it's probably not mine, and I can let it keep moving. But I just wanted to give you that as well, because yes, you're a generator, and yes, you're doing a lot. Yeah, good.
Yeah, for sure. I noticed me and my partner run a co-living and event space in Los Angeles, sort of a hub for conscious community. And we do like, there's a lot of energy that moves through here and kind of transformational events and so forth. And I notice, I'm a very outgoing person and I love connecting with lots of people, and it drains me after a while, and I need to retreat into my own energy and recharge, it's too much.
And I would say that's so much to do with it. The other thing is you've got what we call an undefined G center. So the G center is part of the heart chakra, and it's actually where the higher self sits, the higher consciousness. So again, if you're running all of those events, like it's not only your stuff that you're processing, you're actually taking in everyone else's. So, that is exhausting. So I better let you go, but just take care of yourself.
Very helpful. Thank you for that.
Take care of your energy, and thank you so much for today. Thanks, listeners. I almost forgot about you guys. I was having such a brilliant chat. So thanks so much for being with us today. Thank you so much, Brandon, for joining me on the Human Design Podcast. And I look forward to having you guys here for the next episode. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone, for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope you got lots of value out of it. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Could I please ask that you share this podcast with friends if you found it valuable? And also, bonus points, could you leave a review for me as well on Apple? It would be greatly appreciated. If at any point you would like to be on the podcast, or you've got questions that you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, by all means get on my socials and DM me. Everything you need is there in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.